Hello, this is Dragon Tank 1400, and this is RWBY Volume 1. Top 10 things I like about Volume 1 and the top bottom things I like about Volume 1. So let's get things started with the top 10 things I like about Volume 1. So number 10 has to be the music. Now, the music was pretty good overall. I like the music. I actually listened to it like just on its own, like its own soundtrack or whatever. I'm not gonna buy it. I don't really buy music. I just listen to it on YouTube. I don't own any music, so that's fine. However, it was pretty good overall. The opening track was really good. The Red Like Roses Part 2 and Chapter 8, amazing. You'll hear me mention a lot about Chapter 8. I think that's definitely my favorite chapter in this volume. And just a lot of the other songs, like I don't recall, but a lot of them like play in the background. But I listen to the soundtrack a lot. Now there's some songs I don't like, of course. However, like a lot of them are really good. Anyway, so now let's get to number 9. I don't know why I'm going to do that. Just number 9. Ruby and Torch Witch's intros. Now, I know like I'm using two people's intros, but they were introduced at the same time. Torch Witch kind of comes up here and he just basically robs the store. It's just I think it's a really good scene, and then you get Ruby that's in the store and she's getting robbed, but she turns out to be this huntress in training. And it's the first like fight scene in the series, and it's pretty good. It's not like the best fight scene. However, it's a really good intro to the whole series. And you get introduced to Torchwick, who's a really just fun villain. Like he's not over the top, but he just has this way about him, and the way he conducts business. He just has that charisma, if you will. And then you got Ruby, who, when I like first saw Ruby, I thought she was gonna be kind of more like Blake, in the sense that she's gonna just be all gothic and sad and depressed and emo and everything, because that's the way she's designed. However, she's completely opposite in that, which is, don't judge a book by its cover. I thought it was done really well. Anyway, that's my number 9, Ruby and Torch Witch's intros. Now, my number 8 is just how they went about explaining aura. Now, how they do this is Pure explains it to Jean. Jean doesn't know what aura is, which I hope this is explained later on. However, like Jean not knowing what aura doesn't really make much sense, since his dad and his grandfather and his great-grandfather were heroes who would have had mastered the aura, and most likely their semblance as well. And there's some explanations to this, like Jean's dad maybe didn't want to teach him anything about that for whatever reason. I mean, there might be a reason down the line that it's explained when we get introduced to Jean's parents. However, that being aside, I do like how they explain it, how Pyrrha explains it to Jean. Really the only character who would be least likely to know. And then, like, that's after she awakens the aura. We kind of get to see what it does. It kind of heals Jean a little bit. And he like says like it's a force field. And as Pyrrha's explaining it, we see Ren fighting. I don't remember what they're called. They're the snake-like Ren, and he's using aura not only as a defensive measure, but sort of as an offensive measure too, which is something that we haven't seen since, really. And it was really good, like having Pierre explain that and having them show what it is with Ren. I just thought it was done well. So on to my number 7. And I'm kind of cheating with this one as well. Jean and Weiss's character development. I think Jean and Weiss both have different character developments for sure. However, I think they have the best character development, at least in this volume. And what I mean by that is Weiss's character, like, she comes off really snobby, rude, arrogant, basically that type of character in the beginning. And that's what she is, but like however, as time goes on, and in episode 9 and 10, we see that she can humble herself down, and I mean she's still the way she is, but at the same time she's grown a lot. Just in those 2 episodes, she's snobby and everything, and then she like ends up changing, ends up humbling herself down and getting Ruby coffee. So I thought it was like really good to see like Weiss's character development. We get to see it more in Volume 4 and a little bit here and there through like the next 2 volumes. However, I thought it was really well done to kind of make that distinction. Same thing with Jean. I mean, him and Ruby kind of learn to be leaders, but Jean really gets like character development in like the next 4 episodes after that. He not only like stands up for his friends against Cardin, but he also thinks about others before himself. He learns to do that, and instead of like being afraid of like getting kicked out by Cardin, he doesn't throw the thing at Pyrrha, and he just like, you can do whatever you want, I'm not going to allow you to hurt my friends. So he's becoming that leader who thinks about others before himself. So it was really good character development for Jean, and it was something that was really needed for Jean's character to like move forward. So I thought it was really good. Jean and Weiss's character development, I know like I'm clumping them together, but there's so many things I liked about this volume that I just liked them both, and I really couldn't choose. So on to number 6. Now I'm not going to mention each one of these. However, I really enjoy their hints for later plot points, and you'll see this come up in like my future list as well. Like one of the hints, just off the top of my head, is Ruby's silver eyes mentioned in chapter 1. We don't really get to see that until the end of volume 3. And some people don't like this because it moves away from the episodic like structure. It creates this like whole series thing, and like a series that does it well is One Piece. They have the creator puts like hidden hints like that come up like way later in the series, and I think RWBY does it well too. That's one thing I like, because it you can like rewatch things. You can be like, oh, I didn't notice that before. That's where that's coming from. It's just like in the whole thing about like Jean being accepted by Osmond, like it seemed like it not stated, but it seemed like Osmond knew that his transcripts were fake, and that he let Jean in for some reason. I mean, we got hints on it in volume 4 that there's something special about Jean that we don't know yet, and it's just some of them are like really hidden that you don't notice until like the event happens. Others like make you theorize and question things like, what's going on with this. I personally like that because it gives this series like a connection throughout the series. It's not just like, oh, this happens in this episode and then this happens in the next episode. No, they're all like interlined. And for a series like RWBY that's like that, I like that they do that. Moving on to number 5. Now this one's simple, but I really enjoy it. The Deathstalker design. Now the Deathstalker has this like green algae or whatever it is on it, and it has kind of these like scars. And now correct me if I'm wrong, because I could have missed this in later volumes. However, I don't think any Grimm has been designed this way. Like they have all been pretty much, they've been different, but they haven't been shown to have this wear and look to them that this Grimm has been, well, basically alive for a long time, and gives this age, it gives this like uniqueness to that Grimm. And we haven't seen it. I don't think we've seen another Deathstalker yet. Besides that, oh no, we have, but we haven't seen like one as close up as this one. Yeah, we have in like volume 2 or whatever, maybe volume 3 as well. But this Deathstalker is particularly designed really well, and it shows like uniqueness. I kind of wish like all the Grimm were like this. Maybe not like every Beowulf, but like that they had like scratches and different things about them that show that they have been around, particularly like the older Grimm. So number 4, the fights. Now I'll get to my favorite fight in this series later, but all the fights like Sun and Blake versus Torchwig, Team RWBY versus the Nethermore is pretty good. Team Juniper versus the Deathstalker, like the intro fight pretty much all the fights were really well choreographed, and Jean versus the Ursa was done really well, I thought. Just the fights in general are really good, and that's my number 4. Now my number 3 is Jean and Ruby's walk at the end of chapter 2. Now Jean was introduced sorta in chapter 1, but this is kind of where he really gets his introduction. And Jean and Ruby just walking, and the first time I've seen this, and I've said this in some other videos, I was just like, oh well, that's the ship. Jean and Ruby are gonna be together. But then Jean gets with Pyrrha, and like I've discussed it in length before. However, I do think this is a really nice scene, and at the very least, it shows like how close they are as friends, and that they really connected really easily. My number 2 is Ren and Nora's intro, where Ren wakes up and Nora's like, Ren's getting ready. He wakes up, he's getting ready, and in the background, Nora's like there, like, well, being Nora and explaining like, oh, how we can be partners, and kind of within that, there's some expedition. There's some explaining about, oh, Ren and Nora have been together forever, and this kind of thing. So I thought it was done really well, and I really like the intro of these two characters. It's definitely my favorite intro of any character yet so far. Maybe there's Crow in Volume 3 or Winter in Volume 3 with the fight scene, but I really do like Ren and Nora, and that's definitely my favorite intro in Volume 1. And it's Volume 1, so it's gonna have a lot of intros. I thought it was done really well. Now my number 1, and I mentioned this with fights, that I would mention my favorite fight scene, and that's Team Juniper versus Deathstalker. I really like this fight because it shows Jean's potential. This is like Jean's, you have to remember, this is Jean's like first fight he's ever been in, and despite this, he's able to identify the Deathstalker's weakness, and he's able to coordinate attacks with Pyrrha and Nora, who he just met. It showed his leadership skill, and it showed his strategy skills. It basically shows his potential, and I thought it was done really well. I liked the fight scene. I liked the Deathstalker design really well. I think it is the best fight. It's not necessarily the best fight, but it is my favorite fight in Volume 1. It's my favorite thing about Volume 1. Really enjoy it. Anyway, so those are my top 10 things about RWBY Volume 1. Now let's move on to the bottom 5. The bottom 10 things of RWBY 1. Alright, so number 10 is Ruby's plan against the Nethermore. Whereas my favorite fight was Team Juniper versus the Deathstalker. My least favorite, now this is not a bad fight, the choreographing is amazing, but my least favorite thing about like all the fighting is Ruby's plan against the Nethermore. One, she does not have any scene where she actually tells her teammates what they're doing. Unless they can read her mind, they don't know what's going on. Second thing, it really wasn't a well thought out plan either, especially since the Nethermore had to be in a specific position to do it, and they had to get to Nethermore there, and like they said, they did not communicate this in the slightest. And though it was like I said, a really good choreographed fight scene, Ruby's plan to defeat the Nethermore wasn't good. It wasn't a good plan. I mean, it worked, but at the same time, it's just like powering through your opponent. Whereas Jean saw a weakness in the Deathstalker, and he used his teammates' abilities to basically use that weakness for their benefit. He saw that Ren attacked the Stinger, and that was hanging, that it could be broken off and used to their advantage. RWBY just comes up with a plan that she just powers through her opponent. So Jean is definitely the better strategist, even though this is like his first fight, which is saying a lot for Jean and not saying that much about anyone else. So on to my number 9 of the bottom 10, the voice acting. Now, the next three things, and I'll talk about them individually, but number 9, 8, and 7, they have all improved greatly throughout the volumes, which is why they're so high on the bottom list, if that makes any sense. Otherwise, they would be a lot lower. However, the voice acting was not particularly good, particularly early on in the volume. However, it has improved greatly since then. So I give the voice actors definitely credit for improving greatly. But at the beginning, it really was not that good, and it's one of my least favorite things about the volume. So number 8, and it's the shadow people. I think pretty much everyone would agree with me that the shadow people don't really add much, and there's scenes like with Sun, and so a close up of Sun, and then shadow people like right next to him, not reacting to him jumping around. That is like probably the worst shadow scene ever. I mean, if you can do shadow scene, have them in the background, don't have them like right next to the people. Anyway, they got rid of the shadow people in volume 2, so they improved it, like I said. But that is my number 8. Now, number 7 is some of the animation, and what I mean by this is the movements of someone grabbing a cup, or someone like RWBY grabbing cookies in chapter 1. It's, you know, just some of the movements that they do for the animation, and like I said, this has improved greatly again. So, but it's just something, one of my complaints about volume 1. This animation has improved, which is definitely saying a lot. I like that the creators of RWBY, Rooster Teeth, like sees their flaws and they improve them. So number 6, Blake running away to Sun. Now this makes sense for a character. It does. It makes sense for a character. However, I still don't like it. I don't like that she just runs to the stranger just because they're a Faunus. And I like that Blake has this flaw of running away, and this flaw of that she connects to a Faunus she doesn't even know, rather than, you know, a human. Humans that she does know. It's just like it's just a flaw. She wants equality and everything, but at the same time, she herself is, you know, still a little bit racist towards humans, even though she doesn't want to be. She wants equality. So it's just this flaw in this character. I like that aspect. What I don't like, I still don't like that she just ran away to Sun. And Sun was obviously snuck on board. He's from Vacuum. He steals, like, so she just fell for like the bad guy, just like she did with Adam. I just don't like that she just ran away to Sun without even considering talking to at least RWBY and Yang. I understand her not wanting to talk to Weiss, but yeah, it's just something I don't like about the volume. It's not something I really don't like, but it's there. Speaking of Sun, I don't like. This is my number 5. Sun's intro. I don't like his intro. I don't know why, really. I just, like, when I watch it, I'm just like, really? Like, they show him to be this rapscallion, as Weiss would say. I think that's what she said in the chapter. And, you know, he's shown as a bad guy, is a bad boy, like doing these things, not as bad as like Adam or anything, but at the same time, like later on, we don't really see him steal. We don't really get to see him. I mean, we don't know if he sneaks on that boat or not in volume 4, but I just don't like his intro. I don't like that he just like I just, there's something about it I just don't like. And I think it could have been done better. Maybe it was the shadow people. Maybe it was just the way it was handled. I don't know. But it's my number 5. Number 4. Yang helping or not helping RWBY make friends. It's not so much the fact that she helped RWBY make friends, or the fact that she didn't want to help RWBY make friends. It's the fact that she kept switching between the two. She was like almost bipolar, and it just, what the heck? Like, 1 minute she's like, oh, I'm going with my friends, you go make your own friends, and the next moment she's with Ruby and she's literally helping her make friends, and then the next moment she's like, oh, I don't want to be your partner, and then we get to see her a little bit later, oh, I gotta find Ruby to be her partner. I don't understand. This upset me. It was just like Yang switching between helping and not helping Ruby make friends. Don't understand it. It's like Yang had multi-personalities for those few beginning episodes, and then she never had him again. Anyway, so that's my number 4. So number 3 is the lack of explaining semblance, which they still have yet to do, and we're at volume 4. We finished with volume 4 at this point. Why? They're at a school. Why couldn't they just set up some semblance, teacher explaining what semblance is, and then doing something like with fighting in the background, or they could even just do the animation from the world of RWBY or something to explain exactly what semblance is, because at this point it has yet to be really explained, and that leaves a lot of, maybe they're doing this on purpose so they have a lot of open ends, like with Crow semblance being bad luck. How does that work? It's just like a concept. Does semblance semblance is what we know about semblance is that it's a connection with the aura, with the person's spirit, and each person has differently based on like who they are, or in some cases it's inherited, very rare cases like Winter and Weiss's. And then does semblance, like you using your semblance, does it diffuse your aura? And then if so, then why someone like Crow still has an aura since it's always active? If not, then why don't characters continually to use their semblance like all the time? And some characters do, some characters like Ruby don't. Like Cinder uses her semblance like all the time, and Glinda does, and I mean there's some characters that they just depend on their semblance to fight, and that they use it all the time. Crow's an example. And then there's got other characters that don't use their semblance all the time that could. I mean, there's some situations where like Nora's semblance is absorbing electricity, so she can't use that all the time, but like Ruby, why isn't she using her semblance like all the time? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And like Weiss uses her semblance all the time. Like, why doesn't, and Blake does too. Like, so why not Ruby? They need to explain a semblance somehow, and they haven't done it, and they should have done it in volume 1. Did a really good job explaining aura, and there's still questions about it, but they need to explain semblance. And that's my number 3. So my number 2, people are probably definitely going to disagree with me on this, but my number 2 thing I dislike about RWBY Volume 1 is Yang's character. Now I already explained that was number 4 about Yang helping and not helping, but also like besides that, she doesn't do anything in this volume. She has like no character development at all, which I'm fine with. Like Ren and Nora didn't get much character development, and I'm fine with that. However, the fact that she doesn't get any character development, yet she's always there, and just to kind of make cracks or whatever. And also, like the voice acting of Yang is not done good this volume. It has improved like over time. In the beginning, even the beginning of this volume even in the end of this volume was way better than the beginning. And it's just something about a character I just don't like. It just I like her now in volume 4, where she actually got some depth and some change in her character. Hopefully getting her arm cut off and her going through that has definitely changed her in volume 5 and onward, and she's better fighting. And that's another thing, like Yang is the worst fighter out of Team RWBY. She just powers her way through stuff. She doesn't really have any like really good fighting skill, and we'll see this later, and I'll talk about it in my bottom 5, I'm sure, in volume 2 and 3, especially 3. But I'm not gonna talk about it right now. However, like just Yang's character, that's my number 2. Now Speaking of characters not done well, this comes my number one, and that is Carden's character, Carden himself. Now, I don't mind that he's a bully. I don't mind that he's like an antagonist type character. Like in my top 10 things I like about it, I show that I actually do like Torchwich. Torchwich I think is a great character. And there are other great villains in the series. Look at Tyrion, Torchwig, Neo, Mercury, Emerald. I think these are all like great villains. Even like Watts and Hazel, who we really haven't seen much, I can see that they're going to be great villains. Salem and Cinder as a Volume 4. Before that, she wasn't really that good. But it's not like they don't have the capability to make a great villain. And though Carden's less of a villain and more of a bully, his character did not develop or change. And I understand that they didn't really want to put the time into Carden. However, like, you know, we get to see him a little bit in Volume 2 and a little bit in Volume 3, but he's the same guy. He's the same Carden. He didn't learn anything. He just really, like, really upset that people are better than him. And it doesn't go into, like, any explanation of why he's like this. Apparently, he's just a bully who's a bully for the sake of being bully. He has no reason to be. I just didn't like how they handled Carden's character, and hopefully he doesn't really appear ever again unless they're actually going to do something that's good with this character. We'll see though. But so my number one things I dislike about it is just Carden in general. So that was my top 10 and bottom 10 things about RWBY. Now at the last part of this video, I'm going to discuss from a Christian point of view the things that I liked about Volume 1. Now I'm not going to get into the lore. They didn't really talk too much about the lore except for Aura. But the lore in like anything, any fictional work is fiction. So I'm fine with as long as it doesn't really go into demonic stuff, if you will. And I might talk more about the lore during like the Volume 4 where more is discussed. Anyway, one good thing I really like about this volume from a Christian standpoint is Weiss and Jean's like really character development. Weiss was very like selfish and very conceited and arrogant, and they humbled her down to serve coffee to RWBY. So it really displays that like humbling down and becoming someone's like humbling yourself down as a servant, as Jesus Christ did for us. And you also have Jean and RWBY, who learn to be leaders, but learn that they have to think about others. They're those that they're leading before themselves, which is definitely a Christian standpoint as well. Something as a Christian I definitely support. Now there's a lot to discuss in my next point, but I won't discuss it here. I might do a separate video on it. I don't know. And that's about like the White Fang and Blake's role and all that. The thing, like, I originally did not like Blake's character just because she was down and sad and stuff like that, depressed. However, looking more into it, I do like Blake's character more and more, given the fact that she came from a background of the White Fang doing good, protests and stuff like that, to becoming like a terrorist organization and basically getting what they want through fear. And she goes down this route for a bit, and then she comes back and she sees that what happens is wrong, and that what she wants, it's kind of like with some of the big civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks. They want equality. They don't want to get equality through fear or they don't want something that's above equality. Now this is an important concept. They basically kind of got this from X-Men, if you will, and X-Men probably got it from something else. But if you look at it, there's a lot of similarities. Whereas the X-Men are more in Blake's shoes, they want equality for the mutants. They don't want something that's above equality. Magneto if you're not X-Men, Magneto is a villain. He doesn't think this is possible, so he thinks he needs to rule over the humans, basically take everything over and get respect get what they want by fear of the mutants. So without getting too much in depth about the White Fang or Blake's character and all that, from a Christian standpoint, I can definitely support racial equality. And how they're presenting it here, how one group, the White Fang, now the new White Fang, I guess, is going way too far in acts of terrorists to get what they want. They don't want equality, they want something more. Whereas Blake, she really wants equality, but sometimes she still struggles with it. However, I can talk about this more in a different video. There's a lot to discuss here, but from a Christian standpoint, I think they actually did a good job with the racial message that's throughout the story. Anyway, this is my top 10 things about RWBY Volume 1 and bottom 10 things about RWBY Volume 1. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I will be doing Volume 2 and 3, but it's going to take me a while. I have to watch it all and get pictures of all of them, and I'm not going to binge watch it. I don't really have the time to do that. So that's why this video took so long to get out here to begin with. And the next one's probably going to take similar amount of time, I would say. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. Bye.